All right, so as I was saying, Chapter 4, go, all in one. Network security and privacy. All right. So, first thing I want to talk about when it comes to networks is NICs. All right, and a NIC is a network interface card. And this is what enables the device to talk with other devices on the same network. All right. Now, up on the screen, I do have a whole bunch of different NIC options out there for you guys. There is probably what is built into computers the most, all right, which is kind of down here in the bottom, which would be, I don't want the highlighter, I want the pin, which is that one that's circled in green already. That would just be your Ethernet port that's built right into your motherboard. Now this one is on a laptop, but same idea comes for everything. All right, so desktop computers, they all definitely have an Ethernet port built into them at this point. Definitely is probably stretching it, but probably like 98% or something like that of motherboards are going to have built-in Ethernet controllers at this point. Laptops, on the other hand, actually that port has started to go away. I guess they've done research and they decided that not enough people are using them, that it's not worth keeping them. But we're trying to get laptops super thin, super light, and all that other craziness. That Ethernet is just a bygone era. Everything's wireless anymore. Nothing important happens over Ethernet, I guess. I don't know. Kind of drives me a little bit nuts that Ethernet port isn't there anymore on laptops. Because there are applications where you need Ethernet, especially when something else that you're working with, when probably more of the industrial side of things, doesn't have Wi-Fi, and you have to connect to it over Ethernet. So that Ethernet port is definitely a questionable on a laptop, but on desktops it is basically almost a guaranteed type of thing. So that will be one of our wired options. Another wired option is actually a combination of these two right here. All right. Oh, and up at the top. Anyway, yeah. So up at the top, I have an add-in Ethernet card. All right. So that one is PCI based, as it says right there on the screen. So this is something that you would add to a desktop. Now, this could be an older desktop that might not have a built-in Ethernet, which I don't know when that would be anymore at this point. It seems like that would be ages ago. So probably not the case. But it could also be in a situation where you need more Ethernet connections. You need either more data bandwidth, or you need more just to be on two different networks, or something along those lines. So there are times where you might want multiple Ethernet ports on your network. This one, I don't know what it is. It could be a 10 gig card. It could be a 2.5 gig card, which would be how many gigabits per second. So we can get extremely high wired speeds at this point. So that might be a reason you upgrade to, is your onboard one only has maybe a 1 gig connection and you want 2.5, 5, or 10 gig Ethernet. So that might be what's up there. Back to down here, another wired option. This is a two-parter. So this would be overall fiber optics. All right, so this is using flashing of light instead of electrical signals to actually send your network information down a glass tube. All right, now fiber optics is usually going to be glass. All right, that is the preferred medium to be sending our information through. However, the cheaper cables may actually be plastic. All right, they're optically clear plastic, but they're still plastic, so they're not going to be as strong or maybe they're going to be stronger, but the signal quality isn't as good. So there was definitely a little bit of a good take there. But overall, fiber optics, the best option is a nice glass-based substance. So this top picture with the little blue tab on it actually gets plugged into that hole right there, and that is our transceiver. I missed the R at least. Anyway, you guys get the idea. But so the transceiver, the whole point of that is this is actually what converts the electrical signals, which would be right there, right? We'd be sending them in the end, and then that actually is what sends the light signals out. So this is what actually has those laser diodes or whatever light source is that's in there, or the receiver. All right. You do notice if you look very carefully that there are two different ports on here. All right, so that'd be one cable for sending information and one cable for receiving information. So we do have what's called a duplex connection there. All right. So we can do both send and receive at the same time. Another wired option that you might have, and this is great for laptops, is this one up at the top, which would be USB based. All right, so we have a USB 3 to Ethernet adapter. How do I know it's USB 3? Well, that blue plug in there, that is a dead giveaway that it is USB 3. All right. You can do it over USB 2 as well, but you're not going to get as high transfer speeds. So there's always going to be a little bit of a give and take going along in that aspect of things. Down here, when we start getting into our wireless options, all right, we have a Wi-Fi card. All right, this would be your standard home Wi-Fi, 2.4, 5.8 gigahertz, one of those two. Maybe it does both. However, you might also see a wireless card that looks like that, but that could be cellular based. All right, so we could do, get onto a T-Mobile's or Verizon or AT&T or Cricket or whatever wireless provider it is that you like. You put your little SIM card in there, and bam, you can then connect to those wireless options. More often than not, those wireless options, I'd say, are either going to be USB based, not PCI, or they might just be a wireless hotspot. So it would just be another device that you sit over here that has your SIM card in it, that has some antenna sticking off of it, that you can then that connects to the cellular connection, and then you also have Wi-Fi built into that, so your laptop or phone or whatever would connect to that way. So there is definitely a little bit of a give and take going on there when it comes to cellular connections. But all of these are going to be network interface cards. Now, I have PCI versus USB on here, all right? And the big question is, well, what's the better option, right? PCI or USB? And the only real difference here is how fast can we transmit data, all right? I'm just going to throw some numbers out at you guys. So USB 2 is only 60 megabits per second, or megabytes per second, all right? So that's pretty quick, all right? If you have a 100 megabit network connection, that's 60 megabytes is 480 megabits, so that's plenty of speed for a 100 meg connection for an Ethernet cable. But if you're running gigabit, well, then you're only roughly at half the max speed, so you can't actually get that full network speed out of that USB 2.0 connection. USB 3, on the other hand, is 10 times faster at 600 megabytes, which would be roughly 4,800 megabits. All right, so we have plenty of speed for that gigabit network connection. We even have plenty of speed for gigabit, 2.5 gig would even fall into that. We're approaching 5 gig with that one. You also have USB 3.1. Normally, you're going to see that in this USB-C style plug down here. All right. So that would be that. That's going to be 1.25 gigabytes per second, or roughly 8 gigabits per second. All right. Or actually almost 10 gigabits per second. So we can get some extremely high speeds out of USB if we have the right type of interface. PCI, on the other hand, Gen 3, it maxes out at about 1 gigabyte per second. All right, now that is per lane. All right, if you hear everyone talk about lanes of PCI, if you look down here, we have a very small one. If we look up here, we have a very big one. All right, this might be a 4x lane, where this one would be an 8x. All right, so this one uses 4 of the lanes coming off the PCI, which is a direct connection back to your computer. Up here, we have 8 of those lanes. So if we can get roughly a gigabit per second, or gigabyte per second of speed per lane, then we could get almost 4,000 or 4 gigs down here, or we could have 8 gigs up there. All right, so we can get a lot faster speeds, and that's Gen 3, which is what most current computers are. Gen 4 is also out there right now. There are computers that do support Gen 4, so that is something to keep in the back of your mind. And that one's almost double that, so we can get almost 2 gigabytes per second, and then up to almost 8 gigabytes on a 4 lane. So a lot of different speeds going on there. But anyway, the only reason that PCI or USB matters is what's your max speed that you're trying to transmit data at. So it is definitely something that you want to keep in the back of your mind if you are adding an external device to your computer. Gen 3 USB that you see there with the blue, that one is capable of plugging into a USB 2.0 port. So even though you're like, oh, that's a 1 gig connector, I'm fine. Well, if you plug it into a USB 2.0 port, you're not going to get the full speeds out of it, so you're going to have much slower transfer speeds. So just something to, as I said, keep in the back of your mind. Now, you may be asking yourselves, why do we want to have a computer network? All right. I can remember when my parents were getting high-speed internet at home, and I was so excited to get Wi-Fi and things like that hooked up. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. All right, and overall it was, but we were having some issues. But the big reason that we want networks is for sharing. All right, now there are multiple different things that we want to share. Maybe you're trying to share the internet, probably the most common one. All right, you have an internet connection at home, and you want to be able to use it between your desktop computer, your laptop, your phone, your gaming system, your Kindle, whatever wireless devices that you have hooked onto there, your smart outlets, those types of things. So you want to share that internet access. That's probably the biggest reason that we have networks at our houses, at least. Maybe you're going to share hardware. I like to share hardware. What? Well, think about it. Your printer. Most printers nowadays are wireless. So you put that on your network, and you don't have to have a specific computer on, so that way you can print to your printer. All right. It used to be if you wanted to have your printer on the network, you had to have like a desktop or something that was always on that you had your printer plugged into. And then my laptop would talk to my desktop, and my desktop would then talk to the printer. Nowadays, we don't have that capability. We don't have that need with wireless built into the computers or wired built right into the computers, right? We don't have to use USB on our printers anymore. So maybe hardware, sharing hardware is another one. Sharing files, right? You have Word documents or pictures or music or videos or whatever on one computer, and you want to be able to access them from another. So another reason that we want to be able to share. All right. And then we've got, those basically all those types of things. So it's just about sharing resources. Another one that might share, this is probably stretching it in my opinion, is software. At least sharing on your local network. That's not something you might do, maybe remotely, but something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Another question is when it comes to our computer networks is wired versus wireless. All right. We have already talked briefly about the whole network interface cards. Obviously, that was the last slide. But how fast of a connection do you need? And that is the biggest question at this point. All right, how fast do you need? All right, if we look at 802.11n, which is a slightly older standard at this point, but it's still out there. We're getting on the 2.4 gigahertz band, we're getting 150 megabits per second. All right, that's pretty good transfer speeds. If you're dealing with 5 gigahertz 802.11ac, you can get 210 meg to 1 gig per second. All right, so we can get some very high transfer speeds in the long run over wireless. And that are almost basically approaching what you might see in the wired connection. So when it comes to wireless, it may not be necessarily of, well, I don't feel like running a wire. I don't need as much speed. It may be more of, do I need to get a wire to there? Now, mind you, those network connections are probably over very short distances. So if you're trying to go over a long distance, say 100 feet or something like that, probably not going to be getting that whole max capacity out of your wireless at that point. But still, something to take into account. All right. You do have a little network drawing up here. And to me, this drawing is missing one thing. All right. And in your standard home network, you're going to have one more device here. So you have all of your devices, you have your router, but what's missing is your modem. All right, and almost all of us have modems in our house. Fios might not. That's the only one I'm not sure about. If you have Antietam or Comcast, you're going to have some sort of modem in your house. All right, so from our modem to our router, we're going to have Ethernet. All right, that would be there. And then from our modem to the ISP, we'd have coax. All right, and that is the old school, TV connection, right? That big one with the big screw terminal on the end. So that modem is kind of missing from here. And the whole point of that modem is to actually convert your computer signals from a digital signal coming from your router actually to an analog one that is being sent out over your modem connection. So something interesting there. But a lot of times those are two separate devices. Sometimes you can get them as one. If you're a Comcast customer, you probably have them as a single device. I know my parents do. They have Comcast where they live. Here at Antietam, I've got two separate devices. Oftentimes you can rent them or you can buy them straight out. It's almost better, always cheaper at least, to buy them straight out. After like 2 years or something, you've paid them off. So normally cheaper just to buy them straight out and be done with it. But anyway, I've got a whole bunch of different devices here. On this little drawing, we do actually have all of their different IP addresses showing. All right, so you can see how they're talking. So whenever your phone is trying to talk to the printer or computer, it basically says, hey, router, I need to get to this IP address. So just something to keep in your mind. Somebody said in the chat that they only have one box from Antietam, so their modem and router are combined. So that is, that is something that you do want to kind of keep in mind. So yeah, to each their own. Anyway, also on your networks, when it comes to sharing, especially if you're talking files and things like that, servers are going to exist. All right, if you go into anywhere in the real world, any industrial environment, anywhere basically outside of a small home, there's going to probably be a server somewhere. Small businesses, all right, maybe they don't have servers, but they should. Large businesses especially, you're going to have a server. And a server is a multi-user computer system running a network operating system. Now, I'm going to use that overall very loosely. All right. So I like the multi-user computer system. Computer system. I like that part. All right. And a server could be doing lots of different things. It could be your file share. So it could be where all of your company stores their files. So that way, whenever someone needs them, they have very easy access to them. It could be a printer server where you have a whole bunch of printers and this one computer manages which printer gets what information. It could be a web server hosting the website that you view. It could be an email server, for your company. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with servers. And the whole purpose there is to provide services such as internet access, email, and file or print servers. And those are just some. That internet access also actually is one. Your router in the long run is just a computer. It's a very overall low power computer, but your router is just a computer. There's nothing super fancy that goes on there. It's basically reading the packets of information that your computers are sending, and it's determining which way do they go. Do they get sent back from here to there and get sent back out to that, or do they go out to the internet, or who knows what's going on there. But all it is just kind of making those decisions. Now, I already said that we have a modem here, all right? And your router is actually, especially if you have a Wi-Fi router, it's actually 3 different devices. Let's go off a little tangent here. So we have the router itself, all right, which is determining where network traffic should go. Then you should have a switch built into that, all right, and that's where all those different Ethernet ports are. And then you also have the wireless part, right? You got the part with the little antenna sticking off, and that's your access point. All right. Now, without a router, the switch and the access point don't do you much good. All right. But you still have 3 different devices built into that single router. And again, if you get into large industrial networks, you oftentimes will have 3 different devices there. You'll have your main router, which is actually doing all the real networking and deciding where traffic should go and who it should talk to and all those other fun information. You have your switches, which is allowing you to basically, multiply your one Ethernet port on your router to multiple different devices. And then your access point gets plugged into that, which allows the wireless devices to come into the mix. So it's really 3 different devices there, 4 if you have your modem. All right. So when it comes to accessing the internet with over multiple devices, you actually really truly need 4 different devices. Oftentimes they are shoved down into 1 or 2 different devices. So anyway, going back to servers. So servers are going to usually be large computers with fast processors and lots of storage space, as well as lots of RAM. All right. So it's overall it's a glorified computer. It's what it comes down to. There might be some slightly special capabilities of it, like the amount of RAM it can handle, or how many threads or processors it has built into it. But servers often are designed and built for specific reasons. So if you need a file server, you're going to have, well, not a super powerful, but it's got to have some grunt to be able to handle copying and moving files all over itself. Probably slower storage in the long run, because most people are, when you start getting that much storage, can't afford the multiple petabytes or whatever of solid state. So you're going to go with traditional storage. If you're dealing with internet access or something along those, that's probably more internet access, pretty more your router. But so there's still lots of different capabilities that a server could have. Another thing that you might hear with servers is a VDI, which I believe is a virtual desktop interface. All right. And what that allows you to do is basically have all of your operating system, your files, everything stored on the server. And this laptop would actually access that VDI, and all of the processing and everything else would be done on the VDI itself. And all the VDI sends back is the screen. So what to put on the screen where. And then your laptop sends your keyboard and mouse interfaces to the VDI, and the VDI then sends back your, hey, put this on the screen at this location. All right. So you do need a very good internet connection if you're going to be doing that type of environment. But the benefit there is you're not having to replace computers every few years. You just have these little dumb terminals that they don't do a whole lot. Now your server, you have to make sure you keep up to date, but maybe as the years go on, you have less people accessing your VDI, or you get a new server, but you keep your old one around that still only has like 10 people on it or something. So you're able to give more processing power and things like that to people that are logging on. So might hear the term VDI. And then your last device that I have on your computer network that we're talking about right now is clients. All right, and these are just the personal computers or other devices connected to a network that enable people to use said network. So laptops, desktops, printers, game stations, cell phones, home automation devices, Chromecasts, Android TVs, whatever it is. there are a lot of options out there for things that will connect to your Wi-Fi. Some digital cameras nowadays even have Wi-Fi built into them for uploading photos to Shutterfly or to whatever the case is. So one of those things to just kind of think about in the back of your mind. So lots of things qualify as clients in the long run. Now, every NIC or network interface card is going to have a MAC address. All right, and I have a nice little example of one, and it's going to skip little network interface card right there. All right, this one is 10-F0-05-40-F3-222. All right, so you're going to have one, and that MAC address should be unique to your device. All right, so I have another example of one right there. There are, I don't even know how many. So that's 1,000, that's million, that's billion. I don't know. I don't know what that number is, but there are a stupid number of different MAC addresses. All right. So let's see. It would be 2.81 times 10 to the 3, 6, 9, 12, 14. There we go. 2.81 times 10 to the 14 different MAC addresses out there. All right, that is a lot of MAC stands for Media Access Control. And traditionally, your MAC address is not going to change. So when you hook your desktop up to your home network, the MAC address is set. All right, the company who made your network interface card has a pool of MAC addresses that they assign to specific to that hardware. All right, so everyone in theory has their own specific MAC address. However, we are getting to a point that companies, are tracking you when you log onto the Wi-Fi based on your MAC address. And some companies decided that's not cool, and you know what? We're going to basically fight those companies who are tracking us. And what we're going to do is allow MAC randomization. All right, so this prevents listeners, so like, say Starbucks, from using your MAC address to build a history of device activity. So we're actually working on privacy here. So Android 10, I believe, has this capability. I believe iPhones also have this capability, where every time you connect to a Wi-Fi network, it actually changes your MAC address slightly to help, again, with keeping your privacy, basically. So it helps keep people from knowing you're there. These MAC addresses are 6 sets of 2 hexadecimal numbers. I think we talked about this last class, but if you don't know, hexadecimal means we have 16 different possible combinations for each spot. All right, it can be 0 to 9 and then A to F. All right, so anywhere between 0 and F is an acceptable possible number or letter for each spot. All right. So MAC addresses, they're there. They're not something that you guys are going to probably ever actually truly deal with, but there's something that you need to know about. Now, on top of MAC addresses, which is something that is MAC addresses, remember, assigned by the hardware manufacturer, we have IP addresses. And these are assigned by your router. All right, so assigned by your router, or if they're going to be assigned dynamically, all right, if they're going to be assigned dynamically, they're assigned by your router. If they're static, like you have picked your IP address, then your router isn't having anything to do with it. That's meant you saying this is what I'm going to use. So there are 2 different versions now, v4 and v6. And the biggest difference between v4, which is what I have listed right below it, which is 192.168.something.something, and IP version 6, which is at the bottom, is the number of bits. All right, v4 is going to be 32 bits, which 4.3 billion possible addresses. v6 is 128 bits, or 340 undecillion possible addresses. Undecillion? Again, one of those, never gotten that big. But anyway, that is 79 times 10 to the 25 more addresses for v6 than v4. That's a lot of zeros. All right. Now, why do we have 2 different versions? Is it because version 6 is so much better than version 4? No. It's because we're running out of version 4 addresses. On the public internet, we are starting to run out of IP version 4 addresses, so they're actually having to go to the version 6. This isn't something we're there completely yet, but it is something that is coming in the near future. So that is something to keep in the back of your mind when it comes to 4 or 6. Now, next I want to talk about is public versus private. So the people who came up with IP addresses created this table here. All right, and they came up with the 5 different classes for IP addresses. We have class A, we have B, C, D, and E. All right. Now, inside each of those classes, there are different private versus public. So if we're looking at a private address in class A, that would be 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. So triple 255s. All right. In class B, it's 169 254.00 to 169.254.255.255. And then in 3, it's 172. Class B, I'm sorry. Class C, it's 192.168 to 192.00. Yeah. Anyway, there's different addresses for whether it's public or private. And the big issue here is private IPs are not routable outside of their own networks, right? And this is how the internet works. When your computer asks your router and says, hey, I need information from Google, your computer goes, I don't know what the IP address for Google is. And it actually goes to what's called a DNS, or a dynamic naming service, that says, hey, what's the IP address for Google? And the DNS goes, oh, that's simple. It's blah, 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 blah. And then the router goes, I don't know where the hell that is. All right. It's not on my network. So it sends that information out to the World Wide Web. Where if it would get something that it was supposed to be on its network or private, it would go, oh, it's on here, and it would try to find it. And if it's not located locally, it wouldn't know what to do then, and everything would it would basically crap down. All right. So a lot is going on there. But yeah, so we do have public, we do have private, but they're all part of the same class range in the long run. Now, DHCP, which I briefly mentioned a minute ago, is our dynamic host configuration protocol. All right, and what that allows us to do is to basically, again, have your router assign you an IP address. All right, and the whole reason we want to assign IP addresses is so that one device on our network can communicate with other devices on the network. If we don't have those, they can't communicate, we have problems. All right, so we need to have those IP addresses. And so overall, the router is the one that is going to be assigning this. Someone might be asking right now to themselves, why do we have MAC addresses and IP addresses? And the biggest one is to keep our networks cohesive. So they're going to be all roughly the same, right? All of our IP addresses are going to be on the same network, all right, which we're going to talk about what's the network part, what's the device part in a minute. But all of them are going to be on the same network with different device IDs. With MAC addresses, since this is something that's not a MAC address, but with MAC address, which is something that we can't change, we can't all be on the same network. Your router would have to specifically go, I know where this device is, I know where this device is. And I had to keep a very hard list instead of just going, oh, all these devices are on my network because they have the same starting numbers, basically. So one of the big reasons that we have IP addresses and MAC addresses in the long run. Now, if we move on, so here we have IP address subnetting. All right, and this is when we get a little bit on the confusing side. All right, I'm not expecting you guys to become absolute masters of this. All right, that is just not something that I'm anticipating. This is the intro class. This is not where you're going to really be learning about this. However, I do want to let you know it. All right, your IP address is going to be something like at home, 192.168.52.126. All right, so that would be our IP address. And that is made up of 2 portions. We have a network portion and we have a device portion. So how do we know what's the network and what's the device? Well, the easiest way to know that is based on our subnet mask. And there are 2 different ways that you will see your subnet mask. Way number 1 is this /24. That might be right after your IP address. Way number 2 is this subnet here of 255.255.255.0. And what this comes down to is if we would break this 255.255.255.0 down into binary, it would become 8 ones, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Zeros. 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be our subnet mask. And if you were to count up the ones, you would see that there are 24 of them. Hence why we have our /24 over there. And what this whole 1111100 thing is all telling us is, again, if we would line that up down here, we would align that up. Where's my pen? Come on, you can do it. There we go. If we were to line those up down here, we would see, oh, that's a 1, not a 0. 1, 0 short. There we go. That anywhere you see a 1 in the red, the number above is the network. Anywhere we see a 0 up above, that would be our device. So that would put our dividing line right here. All right. So this this line is our IP address broken down into binary. That's what's going on there. So this is all telling us that the first 24 bits of that binary that we have is our network. So 192.168.52. All right. Normally you'd also see that with a .0 just to continue out the whole 32 bits. And then our device would be 126. All right. So that was another example. If we came down lower, we had 192.168.217.126/21. Our subnet would be 255.255.248. So that would be here. So that means our network actually stops right there. That is all network. And everything after that is our device ID. All right. And the best way I have to explain our network versus our device ID, think of your network as what street you live on, and device ID as what house number. All right. That's the most common way, the most easy way to think about it. Will you show us? I can quick show you guys how to convert decimal into binary. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I cheat when it comes to converting decimal to binary. All right. On a Windows computer, if you open up the calculator app, there we go. And you click the 3 lines at the top. You might start at standard mode, which to me is overall, I mean, it gets the job done for most things. But if you come to programmer mode, notice we have hex, decimal, octal, and binary. All right, so if you want to convert a number from decimal, make sure you have that clicked. Have little blue dots next to it. You type out 192, and it tells you the binary right there. All right, that's kind of my go-to way if I'm truly gonna just try it do nice and quick. Now, if you want to do it a little bit of a more longhand type of option, all right, if you want to do it by hand, overall, it's actually very easy to do. All right, first you'd try to figure out how many spots you would need. All right, so let's go ahead and convert this. We'll go with the 168. Oops, sorry, 168. All right, I know this is going to be 8 bits, so I'm going to put 8 spots out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and I'll just quick write the value. So this is 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and 128. All right, so anytime you're doing binary, the next spot is always double the previous one. So the first one is always 1, and then it's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. If we needed more, it would then be 256, and then 512, and then 128, 256, etc., etc. We only need 8 spots for this. So to go from decimal to binary, all right, what I like to do is I basically go, does 128, does this number on the bottom fit into my desired number? 128 goes into that, yes. So I put a little 1 there, and then I would do 168 minus 128. All right, that leaves me with 40. Does 64 go into 40? No. Does 32? Yes. So let me do 32. That leaves me with 8. Does 16? No. Does 8? Yes. 8 minus 8 is 0, so the rest of these are zeros. And again, if we would look at down here, this 168, we would have 0, 1, 1, or sorry, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. All right. Now, if you need to go the opposite way, and again, you write your numbers out like this, all you have to do is multiply the top line by the bottom line. So 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. 1 times 8 is 1. 0 times 16 is 0. 1 times 32 is 32. And then we have a 0 and then a 128. So then you just add up what you have here. So 128 plus 32 plus 8 gets you to 168. All right, so that's your quick little how to deal with some binary if you're dealing with numbers. So yeah, so that's kind of your IP address subnetting. So something that if you're going to continue on in the IT field, you will probably be dealing with at some point. That takes us on to the AND worlds. All right. So there are lots of different ANDs when we get into networks. We have PAN, all right, which is our personal area network. This is going to be an extremely small network. All right. We're talking 2, maybe 3, max 4 devices probably. This is normally going to be one person to another, so it's normally only going to be two people. And a great example of a PAN network is something that many of you probably do on a somewhat daily basis and don't even think about it, but it's Bluetooth. Right? Your headphones to your phone to your car, your keyboard to your tablet, your mouse to your computer. Those are all little PAN networks. They're personal area networks. They're small. They have like a 30, 60 foot range, somewhere along those lines. Traditionally, at least that's what it's advertised as. Normally lower power, which is great. But it allows us to send data back and forth between things. And again, Bluetooth is not the only PAN option. You can have a small PAN between 2 laptops. One in access point mode, one not in access point mode. So something to think about. We move up a little bit in size, and by a little bit I mean a lot, and we go on to LANs, or local area networks. This is what you are on at home right now. If you have multiple devices sharing your internet, you are on a LAN. All right. So all connected devices in this instance are all going to get the exact same physical location. So in one single building. So in my home LAN, my home local area network, I have 25 devices. All right. Some home automation, some computers, some TVs, some all those types of things. So I have 25 different options. Printers would be another one. If we move up this is really more of like a half step. We get to WLANs. All right. This is a wireless LAN. So truly you're on a WLAN if you're on a wireless connection. So again, if you're on a tablet or a phone or a laptop or a desktop that's using Wi-Fi, you're truly on the wireless LAN, all right, which is part of the other LAN. I know, so many ANDs. If we go a little bit bigger from LAN, we go up to, we're gonna go down to MAN. These two really should be switched. All right. So our MAN is a metropolitan area network. So it is a network that covers a single geographic area. And I think your textbook actually gave me this example, which is a great way to explain it. The wireless internet in Philadelphia. All right. So if they have a whole bunch of wireless access points that covers a large portion of Philadelphia, that would be a WAN. All right. So it provides wireless access throughout most of the city. It's covering a huge geographical area. It's not just one building, but it's covering a large area. I would call HCC's campus as a MAN, a metropolitan area network, and then each building itself would be its own little LAN, or local area network. All right. And up here on the screen, I do kind of have a little, what I'm going to call, just maybe you'd call this this area. Oh, of course, I'm going to just go to the next page. This area right here, maybe you call that your MAN, and then each box would be your LAN. And again, I think everybody's going to have their own slight different descriptions here for a MAN versus a LAN versus a WAN versus some other things. So, especially when you start throwing this MAN in, that metropolitan area, that kind of adds a kind of little bit of a gray zone to me of what is that? What is it? What qualifies as part of that? All right. Now, if we move back to the WAN, the wide area network, that is connecting multiple locations and multiple LANs over dedicated lines. All right. Routers are going to connect your networks, and if you're connected to the internet, you are connected to the WAN. So the cloud, what I have all the way out here, this is definitely your WAN. All right. And if you actually look closely at older routers, at least, your router you have at your house, normally you would see that there's 5 Ethernet ports on the back. 4 of them are normally connected together, and the 5th one's off by itself. So these 4 would be your LAN, and then this one would be your WAN. I think a lot of times now they actually label this one as internet. And I don't know what these are labeled as, but that is just something to kind of keep in the back of your head, that a lot of times WAN, internet, almost the same thing. So again, you could qualify HCC's campus as a WAN because we have a router in each different building, main router in the network cabinet or network room, all right, that's dealing with a lot of that stuff. After our WAN, we have VLANs. All right, now VLANs are going to be part of your LAN or your WAN or whatever you want to call it. All right, and a VLAN is a virtual local area network. All right. So a LAN, sorry, is normally within a building. So again, within one of these boxes, we have a LAN. All right. A VLAN is going to spread across multiple buildings and routers, but all the computers on that are going to appear within the same network. So again, if we think of this as just this box is your house, right? This top box here, that's your house. And you or any one of those computers connected to your router, you'd be able to access all the other computers there if you have network sharing and things like that set up. But what if you're on campus, right? And if this one building is the STEM building, but I need to access a computer in another building, how am I going to go about doing that? Well, the easiest way to do that is via VLANs. All right. So in this case, these blue computers, which hopefully it's obvious to you guys what ones are the blue. So this one and this one are blue, and this one right here is green. You notice there's a green one in all of them. And I even labeled this STEM, CPP, ATC. All right. So the green stations are going to be all the teaching stations. All right. So they're all going to be on one VLAN. So they all can talk back and forth to each other, even though they are located in different buildings. So anytime this one is trying to access that one, it's actually going to this router, to that router, up to here, and back to there. So it's a kind of a convoluted way, but it is still able to access that computer. It's able to talk to it. It's able to ask it questions. It's able to do whatever it is that it needs to do. All right. So VLAN is just basically a way for us to make it seem like these two computers, or these three computers, are all connected to a single router. All right. As far as let me clear this. We're getting a little too crazy. Basically, as far as these green computers are concerned, there is one little router here that they're all being shared connected to. All right, but it doesn't make sense in the example of campus for a wire, one Ethernet wire to go from the CPB building to the STEM building to the ATC building. That's just too far. All right, so we have these fiber backbones here. Everything that's an F is a fiber. And we're just basically doing a little bit of computer trickery to make it look like those three computers are all connected right to each other. So that would be a VLAN. And our last type of AN, which isn't really an AN, but is a VPN. All right. You guys may have heard of VPNs as ways to watch YouTube or watch Netflix videos in other countries and blah, 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 and protect your internet access. And yes, a VPN can be that. A VPN is a virtual private network. All right. So in this instance, if we would have, another router, another modem, and then another router and things like that over here, and my computer with our little keyboard on it, connected all the way up, a VPN will make it look like this computer is connected right there. All right. So it's basically a VLAN, but it's using the cloud or the internet to actually make that long distance connection. Where a VLAN is all local, so it's all in the same general area. Again, campus being the general area, the metropolitan area network, or the WAN, however you want to call it. A VPN is using the internet or long distance. Now, this could be over a cellular, it could be over wireless, it could be over Ethernet. That type of connection doesn't actually matter. What matters is it has internet access. It can ping or connect to our main campus, our main network right here, and then it can log on, and the main router will go, oh, you're supposed to be on this VLAN. So it'll be, basically sitting here, but it'll be a green border connected there, and it can then connect back to whatever other green devices are there. So, yes, you can use them for security. All right. And you might be going, what do you mean by security? Well, in theory, all of the information that you send out, that your ISP, because your ISP sits, again, let me go ahead and clear this. Your ISP sits roughly, right here. In theory, all that data that you send out, your ISP can manage to some extent. All right, especially if it's connected over boring old HTTP. All right, that would be unencrypted. If there's an S at the end here, I put it at the bottom. That would mean you have a secure connection, which means from your device to wherever your final resting point is, your server all the way out here, there's a secure encrypted connection between. If it's just straight up HTTP, there's no secure connection. So your ISP can monitor that information, and it can collect all that data, and then it can sell that data. And anyone who's using any internet provider, any company that's giving you stuff for free, CVS with its little tracking tags, or Martin's, or whatever that has the little, you're a special member, we're going to give you some discount cards, those loyalty cards. That's the term I'm looking for. Any of those, they're going to be tracking you. They are going to be recording all that information for the purpose of better understanding you and or selling that to the highest bidder. All right, now, but normally it's anonymized, right? They've removed anything that specifically says, "Oh, Greg bought Cheerios today." No, it's the gender range of 20 to 30-year-olds, they like to buy Cheerios or Honey Nut Cheerios, and the 30 to 40-year-olds like regular Cheerios. And this is all data that they've collected because of those loyalty tags. They know how old you are and those types of things. So they're going to be collecting that data, and that's what Facebook does. That's what Google does. That's what Yahoo, Microsoft, all those different companies do. They're collecting that data, anonymizing it, and selling it off to other people to use for whatever purpose it is. So that's what our VPN is, our virtual private network. But anyway, how that works is how it's going to make you protect your internet access, how you want to call it. Basically, it's saying that your device here, everything is encrypted from you, encrypted, all the way out to your server, that your VPN that you're connected to out here, and then your internet then comes out of that, and it's unencrypted or encrypted form, depending on it's HTTP or HTTPS, and then goes from there to your web server of Google or wherever it is that you're trying to talk to down here. So your ISP just sees that, oh, it's an encrypted connection. I can't monitor that, basically. It comes out here to your VPN provider. Your VPN provider then sends those requests out to the web. So maybe the ISP of that VPN provider is monitoring things. But it's much less likely at that point, because normally those are in the giant data centers or the network hubs or things like that. So it's a little less obvious that they're being tracked, at least. So that's how that VPN is going to help protect you. And the last thing on my slide here is domains. All right. So a domain is a network of clients and servers under the control of one central security database. So here we have our little server. All right. Anytime you guys are on campus and you log onto a computer there, you type in your username and password, you are logging on to the domain. So basically, this computer is basically, when you're like, I'm going to log on, it comes out here through that router, comes down to our server. That server says, yes, that person is allowed to access the internet, and it sends information back. And then now that you're signed on, it goes, you have access to the printers and the internet because you're a student. However, if me, the faculty member, logs on through that same domain and it sends permission back, it goes, you get printers, internet, you get the servers, you get, whatever other things that me as faculty I get permission to do. Maybe it's things like on the computer, like I can install software on the computer, as where a student cannot. All right. So that domain is basically a central security database. It's saying you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. That central server is called the domain controller. And then, in theory, this is going to save you time over individually signing on to each server. All right. So again, when I sign on to this, it automatically says, hey, Greg, here's your network drive that's specific to me. Here's your servers that's specific to your division. Here's the servers that are specific to teachers. And it automatically goes bang, 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 connect all these things for Greg. Where if you sign on to it, it doesn't allow that. So yes, there are different access levels, as again somebody messaged me. So depending on which level of security you are allowed, or maybe different qualification. So you might have students, and I don't know if this is how HCC works, but you might have student, you might have faculty. By that, I'm going to say teaching. I don't know, my writing sucks, I'm sorry. Teaching faculty, you might have our administration, who have different stuff. You have maybe IT people who are on a whole nother one. We have IT helpers, which are on another one. And each of these have different capabilities. So depending on what the system qualifies you as, you can do different things. And there's actually probably multiple different faculty levels for, like, you can install software, you can't install software, depending on who you are, what you need, and what your capabilities, what IT thinks your capabilities are. I don't know. So I have no clue how HCCs work, but those are just some examples of those different access levels or groups that they might have put you into. So that's just something to think about when it comes to your domain. So anytime you log onto a computer somewhere, you're accessing the domain. Especially if you're logging on remotely. Some computers will remember that you've logged on, like my work laptop. I don't have to be on HTC's network for me to log on to it. Once I've logged on once, it basically stores the temporary, but long term, my username and my password on this laptop. So anytime I come to log into it again, I don't have to actually access the domain name. Now, if it is available, it will go check that to make sure it's the most recent username, password, yada, 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 but not necessarily have to. And then in the future, even with your Wi-Fi, you guys are going to be connected to domains at HTC because they're going to soon at some point they're going to be when you connect to HTC's Wi-Fi, it'll just be the first time you'll access it and it'll be like, what's your username and your password? It will go to the main server, say yes, they're active, and then it'll give you a little security certificate that just lives on your phone. So lots of going on there when it comes to our network. Now, when it comes down to network protocols, there are a few different ones. You all hopefully have heard of HTTP already, all right, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is mostly used for requesting and delivering web pages. Hopefully you all have heard of FTP, which is File Transfer Protocol. I'd say almost that this one's getting a little outdated. I can remember when I was young, being at school, and I'd specifically go to like FTP / www, whatever it is. All right. Rarely do I see that anymore. Normally there's some download link on an HTTP website and it just, sends information out. It's not you directly accessing an FTP, but that is something that you still may see around. We have UDP, which is our User Datagram Protocol. All right. So HTTP or TCP. Yeah, TCP. Anyway, let's take a step back. UDP, this is an alternative to TCP. All right, we'll come back to TCP in a minute. It is a simple OSI transport layer protocol, way probably above what you guys are learning OSI right now, unless you're in a class that's going to talk about it. We're not getting into that really here. But it's based on the IP protocol. IP is Internet Protocol. It's one of the older network protocols that are available, introduced in 1980. And it is mainly used in applications tuned for real-time performance. All right, and the reason for that is we don't have error checking. So with TCP, right, if I have my computer here and I'm trying to talk to this computer, and then we have our little router, and then we have the internet in the middle. All right, so I connect there to there, back to back. So this is my router, computer, and then we'll have the internet. When you send an HTTP request, it sends information from here to there. I should change color for this just to help specify. It goes from here to the, there we go. To there, to there, to there, to there, and then information then gets sent back. All right, so I request information, that information gets sent, I check to make sure it's all there, and I go, thank you. UDP, on the other hand, it's just me sending information out. So it's just a one direction thing. So there's no error checking, there's no request for information, it's just me sending that information out. TCP, on the other hand, which is Transmission Control Protocol, handles data packets and ensures that they are transmitted reliably. So it's actually making sure your information is getting where it's supposed to be and you're getting responses that you're expecting and those types of things. So it is a little bit different. All right. So TCP, you'll notice those are both TCP and UDP are both here on the transport layer. All right. Then we also have IP, and IP is Internet Protocol, as I've already said. And this is for addressing and routing packets to their destination. All right. And again, the internet is a huge place. There are all sorts of different redundancies. So it's just like highways, right? To get from here to Baltimore, you could get on 70 or you could take 40, right? Both options work. And a lot of times those are basically running right next to each other. And there's a lot of different points where you could get off 40 and onto 70 and off 70 onto 40, and you can go back and forth as much as you wanted. That's what IP is doing. It's saying, this is the best route for you. It's kind of like Google Maps, right? You get on it, you go, how should I get to so-and-so today? And it goes, oh, you want to go this way. You're like, why am I going that way? Oh, there's an accident there. That's what IP is doing. It's basically making sure that your packet's going to take the proper route to go from point A to point B. All right, now, we do want to talk a little bit about wireless. All right, and up here I've got a little fancy wireless router. All right, nothing super fancy about this. It is a 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. All right. 2.4 is the slightly older frequencies at this point. 5 gigahertz is going to be what I'm going to call the newer frequencies. Now, just because it's newer doesn't mean it's better. All right. 2.4 gigahertz on your wireless is going to be slower. All right, as I mentioned earlier already today, do I still have that open? So your 2.4 gigahertz is going to in theory max out at about 150 megabits per second. If you go to 5 gigahertz, in theory, we can get up to almost a gigabit per second. All right, so huge difference in speed between these two. I mean, there are some fancy reasons for that, but there's no great reasons in the long run. However, the reason that this one is overall slower is because of its frequency. The lower your frequency that you're transmitting data at, the less data you can transport. However, the big benefit to 2.4 over 5 is penetration. All right. Say you live in a house, right? And your access point is right here. Let's just kind of draw up a nice little house here for you guys. That's your access point. And you've got a wall here with a room, and then you have another wall there, and then you have one wall here. Well, for me to transmit this short distance through two walls may actually take, may degrade my signal more than transmitting a long distance through only one wall. So that 2.4 gigahertz is going to penetrate through materials and things like that better than that 5 gigahertz. And the best example I have of this is the new 5G, wideband, blah, 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 blah. Well, there are two different types of 5G you might hear about, which is something that you do want to take into account. There's the ultra wideband and the ultra high speed, or I forget, 1 millimeter wave or something along that. But basically, to get to those stupid high speeds that they're transmitting your data to your cell phone at, it needs an absolute direct connection. So if your device is through a wall, you don't have that stupid high speed. So in like a city, kind of hard unless they're going to put antennas on every single freaking building. You're not going to be able to get those stupid high speeds. When you get in the rural areas, they'll be able to get those high speeds, but they're going to be degraded quickly because every tree or leaf or thing they're going to go through, they're going to drop off signal. So those super high speeds are a little bit misleading in my opinion. But anyway, so we do have 2.4 and we do have 5 gigahertz for wireless. So something to keep into mind. So you might want to go to that 2.4. It might be a better option if you're a little bit farther away from your router. Even though 5 gigahertz might have better speeds, once you get that same distance away, you may not have better internet speeds because the signals degrade so much. So it might actually be faster to be on that 2.4. So just something to think about. Anyway, for your wireless, so you have an SSID. All right, and that is your service set identifier. The best way to look at that is the name of your wireless network. Don't let it too confuse you, right? They call it the SSID. It's just your wireless name. That's all it is. All right. Now, when most routers will have the option to have broadcasting enabled or disabled for that. All right, which means if you want to connect to it and your laptop doesn't already know to look for it, you have to manually go in and type all the information out and say connect to this SSID. And just again, for those who don't know, how your laptop connects to things is basically it goes somewhere and it goes, hey, is GregNet here? No. Is Starbucks network here? No. Is Walmart net here? Oh yeah, it is. Oh, okay, I'll connect to that. So it actually sends out information and waits for a response saying, yeah, I'm here. All right, so it's actually your laptop's actually broadcasting. It's another way you can be tracked. People can just basically monitor. They're just sitting there with their laptop monitoring information that's being transmitted freely. People are just going, hey, my name's this. Who are you? Are you this? Are you that? And it's just asking all these questions. And as long as you never respond, it's like, yep, nope. It's just going to keep asking questions. So that's one way people can track you is actually by the Wi-Fi on your phone. Bluetooth, same thing. Same thing happens. Kind of interesting things. But anyway, your wireless should be encrypted. I hope it is. All right. There are three main types of encryptions that you have for your wireless. You have WEP. Don't use it. Wired Equivalence Privacy. All right. So basically, it's the same amount of encryption that you have over a wired cable, except for that wired cable. And for wireless, is just being spread everywhere in a 300-foot radius of your router. Just free. Here you go. Here's the information. It is actually overall very easy to crack into a WEP secured wireless network. I was bored a few years ago, so I booted my computer into Linux and I tried to break into my own WEP secured account. And I think within an hour, I had enough information that I was able to decode what a password was and get connected to the Wi-Fi. So definitely something that you want to keep in mind. So it's very easy to do. The tools are out there. You basically download a special Linux distribution, hit a few buttons, and boom, you can be collecting packets that you can then decode later. So don't use WEP. This was the first encryption for the wireless for Wi-Fi. So That's why they went, oh, well, we'll just go with the secure as WireDis. And then people figured out that, oh, if I collect enough information, then I will actually get all of the different packets. So it is very easily hackable. So you shouldn't be using WEP anymore. Next, we have WPA. This is Wi-Fi protected access. This was built as a result of the WEP flaws. There are two different types of WPA. There is PSK, which is pre-shared keys, or there is the temporary key integrity protocol. PSK for WPA, I know so many acronyms, is the more secure of those two options. So if you're going to do a WPA network, PSK is your better option. However, you may not have that capability. This is where the fun part comes in. When you're connecting older wireless devices, they might not always support the newest Wi-Fi security. So you may have to have some slight security loopholes, per se, I'll go with, that allow older devices to connect to your network. So that is something that you want to limit, and there are other things that we can do to reduce the risk of people hacking your network, but it's just, again, something to be aware of. The last type of encryption is WPA, and this is the WPA2. This is more advanced than WPA. It uses the Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES. All right, and this is what's used by the U.S. government to protect classified documents. Not that they're protecting wireless classified documents, but they are protecting just classified documents in general. So WPA2 and AES. And you might hear this as like a 256-bit AES, which means it's basically 256. The password is 256 or characters long, and each character can be, letters, numbers, symbols, capitals. There's so many different capabilities there. So now those are breakable if you're going to brute force them. There is ways, but again, something to think about. Now, your router may also have something called a WPS, all right, and that's what I have highlighted in this red circle right here. Traditionally, it is going to be a little button on your router, all right. It could be a pin that you'd have to type in, or a USB key, so there's a special USB device that you'd have to plug in. But this is used to automatically configure the device that you're trying to connect to the network. So instead of having to tell somebody what your wireless password was and what the name is and all of the information, you'd basically say connect to this network, you hit the button, and then on their computer you hit the WPS button, and it'd be like your router's broadcasting going, hey, who's trying to connect to my network? And your device would be like, oh, that was me, and it'd go, oh, here's my information, and it would just give it to them. All right. In the long run, WPS is actually very insecure because anyone who has physical access to your router, if you have it enabled, can go press that button and get connected to your network. Now, you may be going, well, if they can press the button, they can plug into the Ethernet. And yes, that is something that is also an issue. All right. If you can connect to an Ethernet, you can get passwords. When I first moved to my my rental house, my lease, whatever you want to call it, my place I lived with two other guys when I was back in grad school. I moved in a day, and I was trying to access the internet, and nobody was home. So I didn't have access to the internet. I wanted to listen to some music, right? Gotta stream some music. So what did I do? I took my laptop downstairs, plugged my laptop into the router, opened up the control panel for the router, and I said, okay, this is this type of router. Now, as soon as I was plugged in, I had internet, so I could then internet search what brand router that was and go, what's the default username and password? And I was like, oh, it's this, admin and password or whatever. So I typed that in, and bam, I now was in the control panel. So I now had full access to our network. I could change passwords. I could look at the Wi-Fi password. I could disable internet to certain devices. I could do all sorts of nefarious things. All I was looking for was the Wi-Fi password. So I got the Wi-Fi password, went back to my desktop, typed that in, bam, I had internet access, and I could now access things. So just because you have disabled WPS doesn't actually mean you're now secure, right? Because anyone who has Ethernet can still just plug right on in. So to secure your router a bit more, and that's what most of this page is about securing your network at home. What you might want to do is enable MAC address stuff. All right, and what that will do is actually allow you to limit which devices can connect to your network. So basically, your router says, "Hey, do you have one of these MAC addresses?" Or your device goes, "Hey, I need an IP address. Here's my MAC," and your router will go, "Nope, you're not on the list." So it won't then actually assign an IP address to that device. Now, does that stop them from just manually going, okay, I want to try this IP address and typing stuff in? No. All right, you can still get on your network that way. But it does take more time, which is one of those reasons why you might want to change your default IP address or your subnet mask or things like that, just to throw people off out of the loop. All right. Basically, all home routers, not basically all, many home routers, I don't know, probably 50, 60, 70% are using the IP address of 192.168. Something. And this something is normally either a 0 or a 1. All right. And then, this whole last spot, that is the IP, that's the network, or that's the device ID. All right. And they're going to have a subnet mask of 255, or we're just going to go /24, right? 24 bits. Basically, all home networks that I've dealt with are that. Now, there is one caveat to this that I've experienced personally, and that is Comcast modems, right? The all-in ones that Comcast gives out. Those are almost always. Come on. Here's a link. There we go. Those are almost always 10.0.0.1. At least up to, where this is the network, and then that's the device. All right. That's one of the few examples. At least I think that's where it's dividing. I don't actually know where the Comcast subnet is. I'm not sure on that one. So it might be all that, or it could be here, it could be there. I don't know. If we would go back, way back, this would fall into a Class A network, all right, which means normally I believe that is actually just 255. I think that the subnet mask would just be would be /8. I think that's what Class A is mainly. I think it's /8 /16 /24. I think that's normally how this works, but don't quote me on that one. So again, just kind of one of those things to keep in the back of your mind. So there are some other security things that you can do, but just because you've done those doesn't mean that your network is perfectly secure. No one can go on just by having access. Physical access to a device is one of the best things you can do for hacking, things like that. Anyway, cybercrime, we do have cybercrime, bullying, phishing, farming. All right, cybercrime is basically any crime that happens on the internet. Cyberbullying is bullying and being the internet, also sometimes called cyber harassment, or more seriously, cyber stalking. Phishing is an email list or instant message that crime, instant message crime that appears someone normal do business with you. So like Facebook is emailing you, say, hey, something happened to your account. You need to log back in, and you'll click on the link, and it'll take you to a place where you can then type your username and password in, so that way you can change it. Well, they're really just trying to collect what your Facebook username and password is. So you do need to be careful about that. Or that's farming. Sorry, that one's farming. Phishing is where they're just trying to collect information about you so they can use it to try to access your account information. So like, someone asking if you have any dogs, and those types of things. So phishing, man, Facebook is a great phishing website. So really, don't put anything on Facebook. I don't know how many times I have to tell students that. Don't put crap on Facebook. Probably one of the worst ideas that you can do. The more information you put out there, the less secure your life is going to be, is what it comes down to. And there's some great videos about that, about a CNN guy who personally allowed a white hat hacker to hack into his world without using a computer, really. I mean, she used it for a few things, but she didn't do any physical hacking. It was all social hacking. So she changed his seat on the airplane for his flight home for the 12-hour flight or whatever to a middle seat, because so she called the airline up and just said, hey, my name's so and so, my phone number is this, blah 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 blah. I'm doing an article, can you make me middle seat? And she took his airline points, and she all this information that she got from information on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those types of things. So kind of crazy in that way. So hacking is unauthorized access to a computer system or network. We have white hack, which people are paid to hack, so it's I'm going to call it good guys. You have gray hat hacking, which are people who are doing it illegally, but they're not really being malicious about it. Maybe they're doing it to prove a point that they can do it, type of thing. And then you have black hat hackers, which is hack for malicious purposes. You have hacktivism, which is hacking to make a political statement. We have data breaches, which is when sensitive information or data is viewed by someone who is not authorized to do so. Cyber terrorism, which is basically an all for attacking computers or networks that seek to intimidate a government or its people for political or social agenda. And then my last slide, safe computing. UAC is user account controls. That is built into Windows. That is something that you should not disable. I used to be the biggest fan of disabling it. It's that silly little prompt that popped up that you had to always click allow when you were doing something. It's like, hey, are you trying to do this? And you'd be like, yeah, I'm trying to do that. Stop asking. Don't disable that. You should use user accounts. There are two. There are admin and there are regular accounts, normal user, whatever you want to call it. Really, you should only ever use the normal user account when you're just browsing the internet, things like that. You should only really go to an admin account if you're going to be installing software or things like that. Or guest accounts. Passwords, lots of things when it comes to passwords. Be safe with them. Regularly change them. Don't let your computer remember your passwords. Store them securely. Two-factor authentication, so you get to hit a button on your phone or enter your fingerprint or something along those lines, is a great thing. When it comes to biometrics, this is using human characteristics to provide access to computers. So fingerprints, retinal scanners, voice patterns, face scans, all those types of things. Those will all be biometrics. So many of us nowadays are actually using biometrics. Hey, draw. For our cell phones, right? Using a fingerprint or face unlock. And a lot of newer Windows laptops have what they call Windows Hello, which is again scanning your face to unlock Windows for you, which is absolutely awesome. All right, well, that is all I've got for you guys today. If you don't have any big questions, we will be calling it quits. That was chapter 4.